You are the counselor today. You give us advice. You're the Dr. Phil, okay? With the patients. Help us, okay? We're struggling. Do you want us to break up, guys? Do you? No.
Usually there is a reason why you are emotionally sensitive or strong. That's so true. For me, even though guys are the ones who are supposed to be emotionally like a bit like, yeah. For me, I'm a little bit different. Like I am that guy who is like emotionally all over the place. I'm an emotional being. And that has to do with my upbringing and what kind of like have happened in my life. If I've had like different crises that's happened in my life and I've become an emotional wreck in my life. So definitely like there are some factors that play in your role. But this is what I want to debunk, okay? I do not think that you you should settle with the fact that you are emotionally weak, meaning, oh my goodness, I'm emotionally weak, so I'm always going to be emotionally weak in this relationship. I am the emotional one in this relationship. I don't think you should settle and give yourself that title. Same thing with that, oh, I am emotionally paralyzed or emotionally too strong or whatever. I'm always going to be like this, all that kind of stuff. I don't think, because the truth of the matter is, even though I'm emotionally weak, I have emotionally strong moments. Every situation may be different. There is a situation that I may be the one who's emotionally strong and you're the emotionally weak one, right? And there are some situations where it's vice versa. So now the question is still the same. How do you do it right?
I knew what you have been through when you were younger. We spoke about whatever you overcame, whatever you had challenges with growing up. So to me, people don't understand how much your childhood or your background does affect you as an adult and as an adult entering into a relationship. Because it's those little roots, those little events that I went through, us being bullied, that grew us the tough skin or the weak skin, which is now being exposed in a relationship. Like a relationship exposes your past. Like there's some traits that you don't think like, oh, you would never have to know about that abuse that I had when I was in that relationship when I was 16. But it comes out. You start realizing you're emotionally too sensitive and there's a root to it. And young people need to start understanding that the moment you can acknowledge and see the root, and communicate where that came from to the other person and talk to David about, oh, this happened to me when I was younger, the more you'll be able to overcome the situation together, and it won't end up being collateral damage and you guys end up breaking up. So I think talking about knowing each other's past in not too in great detail, I would say, understanding and talking through each experience, like, okay, you went through that, what was that like? You're not their counselor, don't get me wrong, I ain't his counselor, but I still want to know how that experience shaped him as an adult. I don't know if you remember, babe, I would ask you, so how do you think that experience has shaped you now? I'll ask those questions because it's important to see how that experience that happened 10 years ago affects him as an adult now. And that's when you'll be able to understand the way he thinks a bit better. You'll be like, oh, okay, he doesn't do that because it triggers this. He doesn't do that because it triggers that. So that understanding of knowing each other's background in detail, needed, must, mandatory, protocol. We need to write a book.
So we're gonna tell you. I've got a tip for you guys to be able to do it right. But we're actually gonna take it from the Bible out of all that. I even forgot the verse, but let's give it a go.
You told me yesterday, and I forgot.
Was it Proverbs? It is Proverbs 12, chapter 15. So basically, what we're trying to answer is, how do you deal with conflicts when it comes to emotional maturity? How to deal with issues maturely. emotional.
How to understand each other when you're on different sides of the spectrum?
Yeah.
To somehow meet in the middle.
Yeah. So NIV says, rejoice with those who rejoice, mourn with those who mourn. NLT, New Living Translation, says, be happy with those who are happy and weep with those who weep. And I think what that tells me is that there needs to be some sort of dynamic that happens when you're dealing with situations.
Mm-hmm.
There needs to be some sort of dynamic, which is why I started off by saying that your actual thing about being too strong or being too weak does not necessarily have to be your personality, or it does not necessarily have to be your title, because you need to train yourself to actually lower yourself to the lower level or lift yourself to the higher level or whatever, if you get what I mean. You need to be able to bounce between spectrum. My brain cells are tired. Spectrum, okay? So what that looks like is, hey, if I'm complaining about something, or if I feel like there is an issue in our relationship and I'm talking to you about it, something that hurts me, if you are the one who is too strong in the relationship, your job is to not be like, yeah, but everything is fine. I'm strong. You should be strong like me too. Your job is to actually lower yourself to that person's shoes. Put yourself in that person's shoes and understand the person from their shoes. You do not necessarily have to react like them, but the only way you can understand what's really going on or how deep the problem is to actually lower yourself a little bit and go down to their level. If they're weeping, go down and weep with them. You have to teach yourself the art of actually weeping with those who are weeping and being happy with those who are happy, right? And on the other side, if you're complaining about something that may necessarily not be a big deal, and the person who's the stronger one emotionally says, hey, I don't think this is a big deal. You who is the weak one, you are supposed to put yourself up there and understand what the other person is saying on their level. Because if you stay down there saying, oh, you never buy me flowers. You never buy me flowers. But that person is like, hey, it's not a big deal. But you're like, you never buy me flowers. So you're going to stay down there and you're never going to understand on their level. If you put yourself in their shoes, you'll be able to understand them. Maybe they can't afford to buy you those flowers. Baby, every time I buy you flowers, it costs me about $120. To buy flowers that's going to go in a vase and die in 1 week. I mean, I'm not complaining. I'll do it any day because you're amazing. But all I'm saying is, if the person is complaining about, you haven't bought me flowers for weeks, right? Go down on their level. This is where you ask mature questions and be like, hey, I want to understand you. And the other person will be able to be like, hey, you know what? I've been struggling financially the past few weeks or whatever. And then you'd be like, oh, I am so sorry. So that's where the whole dynamic is. Just because you think it's your personality to be too strong, it does not mean that you need to stay there. Sometimes you need to actually go down to their level and put yourself in their shoes.
Amen.
At the same time, if you're emotionally sensitive and that is kind of like your tendency, it does not mean that you need to stay there. Sometimes you need to actually toughen up a bit and go up to their level and understand it from their level. I hope that makes sense, because I just literally blew all my brain cells, and I'm done here.
He's ready to go.
Now I'm just going to speak gibberish after this.
No, baby, that makes sense. That actually makes sense. And that's what people, even our age, like, guys, I'm 21. I'm young. So if you're younger than me, you're young. So that's why people our age, they don't understand that relationship sometimes it means being able to humble yourself and being like, okay, I get it. It's because humans were such selfish creatures, yo. I would know. Like, I want everything to orientate around me. But especially if it's a serious relationship, that compromise could be so hard, and it could be something you do not want to do. But that's what a relationship is. That's what marriage is. That's why people in marriage say, oh my God, marriage is the toughest thing I've ever had to do. Because there's a lot of stepping down to the other person's level or stepping up to the other person's level. And you having that whole emotional battle within yourself to be like, okay, I need to get over this because she's right. It's not a big deal. Or, okay, I need to, do something about this because this has really affected him, even though I may not think it's a big deal, but I am keen and I'm willing to understand that other person's perspective. That's why I don't just tell everybody and anybody to get into a relationship. Because when you're 21, young as me, it can be something you cannot handle. And your level of emotional maturity isn't at where it should be to be able to handle someone who is either too sensitive or too strong. So, I love him. He's the one for me. Shut up, Rebecca. When he tells you that you need to do something, even though you may think you don't have to, will you be able to swallow your pride and actually be like, okay, I hear from your point. Doesn't matter how much you love that person. Oh, hell no. Oh, does not matter. It's whether you are willing to actually be like, fine, I will do it. And not do it in like, fine. That's still immature. It's like, okay, fine. I hear you. I understand you. And I will do what I can to help.
You will, baby?
Yes. I will. So that's why I don't like 12, 14-year-olds getting into a relationship. I'm like, what you know about compromise? Like, seriously, what you know? What you know, Connor? What do you know about a relationship at 14 that you can tell me? So that is literally my advice.
I'll say one more thing. We said, okay, there's some sort of middle and there's some sort of maturity. So the middle is called maturity. So the middle, like, just remember that, because if I tell you anything else, it won't make sense. There is the too strong and there is the too weak. The middle is called maturity. And the way that you do it is like this. So let's let's set a scenario where there's, there's some sort of issue in the relationship, okay? Now, my question to you is, for example, let's say there was a fire in your house and you called 000. If you called 000 and then you said, oh my goodness, man, my house is on fire. And on this other side of the phone with the people, they're like, oh my goodness, your house is on fire. And that is called reacting. The police or the fire guys, they are not called the reaction team.
Hotline.
The reacting hotline team or whatever. They're actually called the response team for a reason. So the way to deal with issues maturely is to, instead of reacting, is to respond. Because when you react, you dwell on the problem, you also dwell on yourself, and sometimes you can dwell on the other person.
Come on.
When you dwell on the problem, you're like, oh my goodness, we're dealing with this and this and this and this and this. And then after you do that, you're like, oh my goodness, it's my fault. I did this and you start blaming yourself. And then you're like, oh no, it's your fault. That is called reacting. That is called reaction. And you should not do that when it comes to conflicts. But when you respond, when the fire truck comes, their goal is to just get there and figure out what's wrong and what happened and solve the problem. Your relationship your situations should not be reaction oriented. They should be response oriented. If you guys master that, you are having a mature relationship and you are having mature conflicts or mature problem solving in your relationships. So we're literally going to finish on that note because that sums up everything. So there is that spectrum of being too strong where you actually end up being paralyzed and don't notice what's going on. And there is that spectrum where you are too emotionally weak and sensitive. I actually wrote it down. But both of them are immature. The middle is called maturity. And the way to be mature is to, instead of reacting, it's called responding. And that's called problem solving oriented instead of reaction oriented. So guys, that is why you call emotional maturity emotional strength. There you go.
This is why I'm with you, bro. This knowledge, my knowledge, my man.
It's your knowledge.
That's my new motto for the next year. My knowledge, my man. Done. Wow.
Yeah.
If you guys ever want to talk to us, just let us know. Or you can follow us on our YouTube page. If you missed any of this, you can follow us on our YouTube page.
And remember
Dave
to
and
subscribe.
Let's subscribe, get the ring bell,
like,
whatever.
and comment. Let's get this thing talking because we really want to see good relationships formed. We want to see good future families. And
we want to do something right. There's something the generation ahead of us has done wrong. We want to do right.
Yeah, we want to do right.
Amen.
So guys, pretty much it, guys. See you on the next video.